This is the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini, along with my favorite engineer, Rob Barrett. How you doing, Rob? Thanks for stopping by. We know you want to know what it takes to get a book published. You want to hear what some of our writers go through. You want to know what kind of stories are out there because you want to be a published author and you know it. So here we go. John DeMarco was a public school mental health counselor who wound up in private practice as a clinical psychotherapist, and he developed an interest in helping people with anger issues. The name of his book is Desensitizing Anger, a Comprehensive Anger Management Guide. Now, this is something everyone who gets behind the wheel of a car in New York City or anywhere near New York City could use. And we were talking earlier about how frustrated you were, John, by some of the techniques that are currently used to control anger.
If I'm angry and I'm going into an anger episode and I feel my anger soaring, I begin to use techniques, maybe a counting technique, a breathing technique. That approach does not work because when people get angry, especially hyper angry, it's like a light switch goes on. They're fine 1 second and then the next second they're like ready to be in a rage. So paying attention to arousal doesn't work. What does work, and the only way to really help people with anger is to help them to desensitize their anger reaction. And so what I've developed is a new, innovative approach to anger management. In general, anger is a misunderstood emotion and really lacking in attention by the mental health field. There is no diagnostic category for anger in the fields of psychiatry and mental health. It's seen as a feature of other disorders like bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder, but it really should have its own diagnostic category. They feel like they're victims when they really look like a bully. They feel isolated. They feel like no one understands them. They typically almost always grew up in a family with someone else who yelled or had anger problems. They're perfectionists in one or more areas of life, and they have rigid expectations. They have an exaggerated fear of failure. They are insecure about being wanted and accepted by others. They're usually extremely competent people, and some of your most successful people have serious anger problems. Surgeons, architects, lawyers, superintendents of large school districts. They usually are verbally abusive towards other people. They think or believe that getting angry is justified. When I say angry, I don't mean mild anger. I mean going into hyperreactive anger. All of them have unmet emotional needs left over from their childhood. In a nanosecond, when the person confronts something he doesn't like, he has automatic thoughts about it. We all have between 4,000 and 5,000 automatic thoughts every day. I'll give you an example. If you're driving your car and someone throws a rock at your car, hits your windshield, you instantly have a slew of thoughts about that. Those are automatic thoughts. And there's 4 types of powerful distortions in automatic thoughts. They're called cognitive distortions. There are 4 of them, and this is my own innovation. And these thoughts happen in a nanosecond, in 1/18th of a second, and that is the person first strongly demands and insists that whatever is happening shouldn't be happening. Okay, that's called masturbating. Along with it is they have an attitude in which they assign an exaggerated pain rating to the situation. This is terrible. It's horrible. I can't stand it. It's the worst thing that could possibly happen.
Okay, so that's an example of one of the 4 cognitive things
Yes,
that they
it
go
is.
through. So
Right.
you have to start. Your book helps you begin to understand these issues and then without, I guess, medication or anything, and you have to learn to understand what makes you angry.
Yes, they understand the 4 types of distortions, and they learn 4 types of self-directives. What I have designed is a type of replacement thought that is framed as a self-directive. So they have 4 self-directives that help them to control their anger. The key is that they just don't use these when they're in the throes of an anger fit. They have to take time to do mental rehearsals and think about anger situations and then apply these techniques and practice them over and over again. In my book, I present 4 distinct types of mental rehearsals. And people who take the time, to do these dramatically change themselves.
I would think you would have a huge audience for this book.
You know what? I wrote it to help other people. I really feel it's the best thing available anywhere for helping people who have anger problems, and I can't die and not share this with people.
Well, I hope it is appreciated, John. A new, innovative approach to deal with anger. And as John also points out in his book, the first hurdle is getting the person who has an anger issue to recognize it. Our next book is called Dysfunctional One, and I don't want the title to fool you. Author John Davies is anything but dysfunctional. He gathered all the strength and ingenuity he had to rescue his family from West Africa. He started a bilingual school. He was invited to the 2000 UN Millennium Summit as a result of his work for human rights. He eventually was granted asylum in the U.S., and he continues his work in West Africa. He hopes by sharing his story, he will inspire others and stand as living proof that we, as human beings, can overcome insurmountable circumstances when we have to. John, you're the father of 10 children, right? You lived in refugee camps. You had to make several attempts to rescue them?
That's correct. Like, for instance, to rescue my family from Liberia during the war at a very tense moment where they had closed the border. No cars were going in and out. No planes were flying, and no ship coming in and out. But yet, I was out of the country with few of my kids were with me when I did the first escape, and I had to come back in to rescue my pregnant wife, whom I left at the airport at the time I was doing the first escape. So I had to come back in through a canoe, a boat that I bought from somebody else. And I never did canoe before, but I had to learn how to do it and to cross over and go hundreds of miles to be able to get my pregnant wife and my other twin daughters, And then, of course, my 6-year-old at the time disappeared in that war. Okay, we found her when she was 17 years old in another country. And then coming from that situation into Sierra Leone, and our refugee camp was also overrun. So the road has not been so easy. And coming from another war in Sierra Leone, attacking us in the refugee camp and capturing me and some of my children and forcing us to dig graves and, for them to bury the dead people that they've killed in the camp. And out of that situation, I had to come out of it, which is also talked about in the book, and finally end up on the streets of Freetown with nowhere to turn until finally we had to make it from Sierra Leone to Guinea and from Guinea to Senegal. And the challenges we have in Senegal, which is a French-speaking environment, where the West African headquarters for the High Commission for Refugees is in Senegal. So we thought by going to Senegal, that will help us to relieve some of the stress or problems we've been going through. Notwithstanding, we were going to the main headquarters where the corruption was. So we got there, and they used all our children, of over 500 children, they used them as a means to solicit funds and get all the funding in. But then they look at us and say, send your kids to the public schools. But here's the problem. You have kids coming from an English-speaking environment. They come from Liberia and Sierra Leone, where English is spoken in school. So I created that transition by creating a school that I named the Bilingual Refugee School of Dakar. And I ended up getting religious organizations to assist us, including the YMCA. And then we had our school established for our children. And then we had French teachers, we have English teachers, and that's how we were able to transition most of the kids from the English-speaking curriculum into the French curriculum. Okay, but to start that school, I have to start a program, a popcorn selling program, because when I did the research, there wasn't popcorn in Senegal. Only the Americans get popcorn. So we did the popcorn. I got most of the refugees helped me. We developed almost about 12 to 15 flavors of the popcorn, and we started selling popcorn until popcorn helped us to buy a delivery truck. We had a factory. We supply schools all over the place. And then that gave me some ideas to distribute the Universal Declaration of Human Rights through the popcorn. So at the back of the labels of each popcorn, I inscribed one article of the 30 articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in French and in English. So people who were eating my popcorn were reading about their own rights, their own universal rights, which is not taught anywhere in Africa anyway.
Does this school still exist?
The bilingual refugee school of Dakar still exists.
Are you still involved with it?
I am totally involved with it, of course. I got supplies from the World Bank, World Bank book bank. They gave me a lot of supplies that I send, like computers, books, and so many other things. Based on what I was doing in Dakar, Senegal, with my popcorn program teaching the human rights. During the Millennium Conference in New York, the highest gathering of head of state at the United Nations, they were looking for social entrepreneurs, people who were doing business not only to make money, but in order to change society. So that's how I was selected to come over to the United States in October of 2000 at the United Nations to represent African refugees. After the Millennium Conference, because I was outspoken at the conference, that brought about issues which led me to ask the U.S. government for asylum. It took 2 years before the U.S. government granted me the asylum. By that time, my popcorn business and the distribution of the human rights things I was doing was already discarded. My family was threatened not to do anything like that again, and so forth. But then, when I got asylum, I had to file derivative for them to come in, and then it took another 3 years. In 2005, that's when we had everything mobilized for them to come in.
Now that's a story, and we just gave you a couple of pieces of what you'll find in his book, Dysfunctional One. Thanks again, John. Joseph Lefink got the worst news imaginable on September 11th, 2001. His youngest granddaughter was diagnosed with stage 4 neuroblastoma, and his book, entitled Saving Hope, is a day-by-day journal. I got to ask you, Joseph, is she okay?
She's fine. She just got her driver's license last October. She's 16 years old.
Did she beat all the odds?
Yes, she did.
Were you determined that she was going to live?
Well, I didn't know for sure, but the weekend before she was diagnosed, I was coming home with my wife from taking her to a picnic, and my wife cried all the way home, told me that she felt Hope was really sick, and that the morning of the attack, we got a phone call from my son asking for her to come up and help take care of her sisters. And that evening, I stayed here at home. She called and told me what was going on. So before I left my house that day, I wrote an email to everybody that I knew. And then back in those days, I couldn't write an email every day because you had to get back to your computer. I started writing emails, and it got to the point that they were practically every day, and I had people all over the world interested in them, and they would get upset if they didn't hear from me. A lot of times it was day by day. Matter of fact, I wrote some of it while she was having her stem cell transplant in the hospital. I wrote some of it while she was right alongside of me, and I kept them all. And I wrote one last September, just before she got her driver's license, and she's doing fine. But it's the complete history of how she fought and beat the cancer. We went through it one day at a time as a family. My message is that if you believe and you all pull together as a family, that almost anything is possible, and this is living proof. I don't know if you know the football player who's played for Cincinnati. His little girl has the same cancer, and he played high school football against my grandson, and his little girl is going through and doing the same job that my granddaughter did. And I've been trying to figure out a way to get him a copy of this book.
I'm sure if you Googled him, you could get to his representatives, find out, the team that he's on. Just start with the main office for that team. Tell them your story, in a very abbreviated form because they don't have time to spend on the phone with anybody. You could definitely get to him. I'll put money on it you could get to him. And if he played football with your grandson, then his family must still be near wherever they played football. You might be able to.
Oh, yeah.
Then you should be able to find him that way. Do it. Do it and call me back. Thank you so much. We have got to take a quick break, but there is so much more coming up. Do not touch that dial.
Have you written a book and want to get it published? Then now's the time to call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099 and do it immediately. You see, they're looking for authors of all types of books. And unlike most publishers, Page Publishing will take the time to review most of the books submitted to them. And they'll even give you their feedback. And if they like what they read, Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, the Apple iTunes Store, and other outlets. They'll handle everything. Copyright protection, printing, cover art, publicity, and editing. So if you've written a novel, a children's book, a cookbook, inspirational work, a book of poetry, or biography, and want to get it published, then you need to call Page Publishing and do it immediately. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. Your road to fame and fortune could very well start with this simple phone call. For your free author submission kit, call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099.
Hey, thanks for coming back to the Page Publishing Book Club. We really appreciate it. I'm sure you've heard of Messianic Jews. It's a movement that combines the Christian belief that Jesus is the Messiah while continuing to practice certain Jewish traditions. Jay Newcomb is a rabbi, and he felt compelled to explain the movement and what sets it apart in his book, Book of the Shining Path. Did I get that right, Jay?
Yes. It goes from basic doctrines of the Messianic faith up to the more complex and mystical applications of the Torah and to the foundations of the Messianic Jewish movement. And so I took every piece of work and paper that I had done in school over the years and applied those and put those into this Book of the Shining Path. That's basically what it covers. It's set up in a fashion to where each chapter can stand on its own. So if someone wants to learn about Hanukkah, they can go to and learn about Hanukkah. If they want to learn about resurrection, they can go there. If they want to learn a little bit about Gematria involving the Hebrew alphabet, then they can go there. Or they can read it from cover to cover, but I don't think they'll do it in one setting because it's 812 pages.
812 pages of mostly research.
Yes, mostly research. For instance, when my daughter graduated from college and she wrote her thesis papers and all of that, I told her to save all that research material because you can put that into a book of some kind if you ever want to write one, because that's what I did with Book of the Shining Path. Now, I want, at least for the people of the Messianic Jewish faith, I want them to be able to learn the deeper applications of the doctrines of their faith. And for the curious who are not interested in any particular religion, they can go into it and they can say, hey, yeah, this is what this is about. They might necessarily believe that, but they can use it as research material. If someone wants to come along and let's say they're doing a class on comparative religions or something like that, and they're not necessarily religious themselves, what they can do is to come along and take a look at that book, and they can see what defines Messianic Judaism from that book. And it's not a work that seeks to convert anyone or convince anyone. It stands on its own for what it is.
And this is not to be confused with Jews for Jesus. Is that right?
No, I wouldn't consider myself a part of that organization. They have a lot of things that I would disagree with, which is proselytizing. So I've never been a part of that organization. It's a form of Judaism that recognizes Rabban Yeshua as the Messiah. Then you would call him Jesus, but at the same time, we recognize him in a Jewish way, I would say, as opposed to a Trinitarian Christian way. They believe in the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost and all this kind of thing, and we don't believe that. We believe in the biblical proverb or biblical statement that says that God is one. So we don't care that. And also, someone who is already Jewish coming into Messianic Judaism, they have nothing to convert to. They're already Jewish. I mean, so, and our forms of worship are all pretty much identical to Orthodox Judaism. We don't carry the symbols of the Christian religion or anything like that. I don't condemn the Christian religion by any stretch of the imagination, but we don't. Others may consider us that, but we ourselves would not consider us that.
All right, Jay. Next up, Anthony Diffley decided to put a new spin on one of his favorite movies. He wrote Hearing Thoughts. It's about an assistant DA in New York City a few years after he lost his wife in 9/11. And he goes to Lake George for a break. And why don't you take it from there, Anthony?
He gets taken by a alien spacecraft, a UFO, for testing. These aliens are friendly. They come in peace, but they just want to look at and observe mankind. He befriends one of the aliens who gives him a lot of insights, but they also give him the ability to communicate with them through thought transferring or hearing their thoughts. This way, they be able to talk to him and tell him what he has to do. On his way back, sent back to Earth, they were going to remove the thought-hearing ability, but a problem hits the ship, and he is unintentionally left with this thought-hearing talent. Being a prosecutor, he thinks maybe he could use that as a job, and also, too, the fact that he lost his wife, maybe he could use it to help the government prevent another 9/11. What inspired me was back when I was 14, I remember watching a movie called The UFO Incident. It was about a couple who were taken by aliens for testing for the same reason. And what the Hills had told the doctors on their hypnosis was that they were able to communicate with the aliens through thought transferring. So, wow, if we can communicate with them, we must have that talent in our brain already. So ever since that time, I had that thought in my head. And it wasn't until about 10 years ago that I started thinking of a story involving that. Telling all my friends, I have a business here in Westchester that I'm telling all my older customers, I'm letting them know that I've written a book, and they seem very excited about it once I give them an explanation about it. And the original story that I wrote was basically for a movie idea. And when I kept sending it out to different locations to try to sell it, they all told me that it had to be written in a screenplay. So I have some reviews on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and even my friends and relatives. They all tell me that this would make an awesome movie. The plot and everything, they picture it happening, in their mind, and they say this would make a great movie. So I'm hoping that eventually someday. But right now, I'm looking to promote my book.
All right, Anthony, you've come to the right place for that. Finally, Michelle McConnell has loved writing since she was a little girl, and finally, she's put together a story for teenage girls about a very special teenage girl. It's called Dark Shadows. Hey, Michelle, your character's getting ready to graduate high school, right? And then what happens?
And then she decides that she meets these 3 new people, and it changes her whole entire life. She learns things about herself that she never knew before, and then she learns about family and friends. It's basically a story about family. She needs to learn how to trust people and know who she can trust. I've read so much about magic and everything that's involved, and I just wanted to make a character that could live up to that and put herself out there. And my character in the story actually came to life based upon all of that. She stands up to whatever she has to face, and she finds ways to get around all the obstacles that she is met with. I have a plan to make 2 more books for this series.
She sounds like a Lois Lane type.
Yeah. Yes. She does face many trials, and she does find herself asking many, many questions. Basically, how did she get in this situation? Why has this situation happened to her? And how can she get herself out of it?
Is she like a superhero kind of a person?
In the end, you can say that she is.
Yeah.
With her, all she just wants to be a normal teenager and not have to face all this. But since it's been thrown at her, she just takes it and runs with it. The point of the book is basically to look into the future and handle it day by day. Just take it one step at a time and just handle any trials that's thrown at you.
It just sounds like you want to help teenage girls. You want to give them some strength.
Yes, give them something to look forward to.
That's right. We all need something to look forward to, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Especially when we're teenagers. All right. You had a good experience with Paige?
Yes, I have. They've been really good to me. They've helped me out in many, many different ways. And honestly, I never thought I'd even be able to get a book out there on the shelf. And they've given me this opportunity. It's been great. We have a book signing coming up here in September, and with the place that I work with, they are also going to help me promote my book.
That's great. What do you do?
I am a supervisor for Papa John's. I work in the East Liverpool store, and I also take care of some of the stores that's out of Pittsburgh.
If you're in the Pittsburgh area, look for Michelle's book at Papa John's. Maybe they'll put it out there for you. Lots of teenagers there for sure. And we're just about out of time. Doesn't it go fast? Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. Rob and me, we get lonely here. Join us next week, same time, same place, 710 WOR for another edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. In the meantime, please put your thoughts together and start writing.